I saw on WhatsApp that a lot of people were talking about lunch already. I'm hungry too, so bear with me, we're almost there. And thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Claire and Diane, for all your good work. It's great to be here. It's been a great morning. I had so many people talking before me, which was really inspirational. So I'm gonna take you for a short trip to the southeast in Amsterdam, a district which for many people in the Netherlands, but also internationally, is still often referred to as the ghetto of Amsterdam, which was true maybe in the 80s, but has been history already for a long time. So I'm a co-curator at Imagine IC. Imagine IC is a mix between a museum, a heritage, it's a heritage institution. It's a mix between a museum, an archive, a debate center. Somehow we don't want to put one label on us, so that keeps us agile and liquid, and we can go through time and change our methods in our development. So just to give a little bit of context. So this is Amsterdam, and where you see the point, I can't point it actually. Amsterdam Southeast is quite far from the city center, and interestingly enough, it's actually a district that is not connected to Amsterdam itself. There's actually a district between, which is part of a different city. So it is literally disconnected and only connected by a metro and a train. We house together with the local library. We already started working with the local library in the Bijlmer in 2012, when we moved in together in a temporary building. We had upstairs our offices and our exhibition space, and they were based downstairs, and we shared the entrance. And already during that time, we noticed that it was actually a good match between us, because the library is a public space. Free entrance means that it's very easy for people to enter. So we started actually to program our exhibitions, not only in the top floor on the exhibition space, but also on the floor of the library. And then when we had to move the end of 2015 to a different place, we decided to really start working integrated. So what we did is we moved into this new building, which was actually the old tax office, and we now share our office together, and the book space is also our exhibition space. Just a little bit more context of Southeast. It used to be a polder area. Many farmers lived there, but also some rich houses were put there from money that was made out of the VOC period. But during the 40s, 50s, Amsterdam wanted to expand. So they were looking in the area where they could move to, and they actually literally annexed the area of Amsterdam Southeast, what was then called the Bijlmermeer. They first tried to buy out the farmers, then they pushed out the farmers because they needed the space to expand, to build on their utopian dream, which was the project of the Bijlmer. High-rise buildings, big spaces, green areas, clean air. So it was the dream of everybody that was still living at that point in the city center of Amsterdam, where the houses were hardly ever had a bathroom, where people could look into each other's windows and nothing actually was secret. So the dream of moving away to a space where the houses were big, there was a lot of green space for the children to play, that was the future. Interesting enough to mention here is that this space was also developed as part of the whole modernistic concept without any churches. But I can tell you now that the Bijlmer has the highest density of religious houses today because of all the migrants that actually followed after it. So what you can see is a little bit of the development with in 75, when Suriname, one of our colonies, became independent, we started to have a great influx of people from Suriname that decided either to move back where they came from or to choose for the Dutch passport and to start a new life in the Netherlands. Many of them were actually put in small pensions in the city center. They were put there with too many people in too small spaces, which was actually quite dangerous, with a lot of children put there as well, which actually catalyzed a whole squatting movement, because even though we had this great utopian space in the Bijlmer, not a lot of people moved there actually, because it was too expensive. So a lot of these fantastic big houses were actually left empty. So they started to make it their house. And actually, ever since then, the Bijlmer has been the area to welcome people from all over the world as newcomers. And at the moment, we have about 180 nationalities living there. One of the deepest points in the history of the Bijlmer was in '92, and I will talk a little bit later because we did a project on that, was at the Bijlmer disaster. A plane, an El Al plane, crashed into 2 of the high-rise buildings, and 43 people were killed officially. And I say officially because in the Bijlmer, a lot of undocumented people were living and are still living. So for many people that maybe died during that crash, we don't know. We don't know their names. There were no bodies. So it's one of these stories, and because of this uncertainty, even though it's 25 years ago, it's still a very sore point and painful for a lot of people that are living there. So now it's actually a neighborhood that is on the verge of getting gentrified. A lot of students are moving in, a lot of hotspots, a lot of artists are moving in. So it's changing, and everybody all of a sudden wants to live in the Bijlmer. So Imagine I See started about 20 years ago out of an urgency. People from different institutions, Social History Archive and the Tropenmuseum, one of the world museums in the Netherlands, felt that a lot of national narratives were showing gaps. It was not representative of the society that was living in the Netherlands. It was not telling all the stories, and if it was telling the stories, it was all from a very white perspective. So what they did is they started to do oral history projects with the first generation migrants. So this is actually some pictures of what they did. They actually developed like a tale table which traveled around the Netherlands to go to homes, to neighborhood houses, to engage with people, to show them what was in the archives, and actually collecting the reactions to the stories that were told. So basically they were annotating and adding their stories and writing themselves into the narratives and the histories of the Netherlands that were not there before. Since then we have been actually doing a lot of different projects, and one of the big parts of projects that we're doing is collecting youth culture. So we did different projects around street soccer, street language, the dancing scene, all for us little peeks into how youth culture is developing in the Netherlands, and maybe little sneak peeks of what could be intangible heritage for the future. So could this be the heritage that we should collect? And this is something that we discuss with these people, with the young people that we attract in these projects. We tell them one thing, that you have a voice in what heritage is, because we are all heritage makers. It's not something that only happens top down. It is something that we do daily. On a daily basis, we negotiate space And we decide together what we want to bring to the future, what we want to keep for the next generations. And the young generation is also part of that. The last years we've been developing these youth projects into something what we called the Pocket Archive. Everybody has his mobile phones, everybody is on WhatsApp. I've been noticing that for the past days. So everybody is documenting their own lives nowadays on their pocket archives. And so are the young people. By actually putting something online, they say that they value something. By sharing it, they give meaning to it. By liking something from another person, you give significance to it. So by doing that, maybe that's also a little sneak preview of what we should document and collect for the future and what should be kept as heritage. So basically, we are about empowering, emancipate, liberate, and create. We are an experimenting institution, so we have the Bijlmer as showcase, but we experiment on the methodology. How can you collect together with people what is heritage making, what should be kept, and how to keep it? So we are researching the process of meaning making by doing that. And we are, I'm losing, you see I'm getting hungry now, so I'm losing my concentration. I'm thinking of all the food that is going to be there. So basically we are actually building an archive, but we're not only, if I say we're collecting and we're building an archive, it's not something per se that happens physically. So we are not in it to have and to collect everything. It is actually more identifying what is there, to leave some things with those that can take better care of it than we can do. So identify what is there, to leave some things with the people that it belongs to, but identify and make sure that it is traceable. So this is the neighborhood archive. So it's a neighborhood archive where we collect and experiment all these methodologies. So just quickly go through with it because I noticed that I'm running quickly out of time here. So this is some examples of the objects that we collect. So what we do is we invite people to come up with ideas of themes that they think are important. And because we're in the local library, everybody walks in, and they even sometimes walk in with a plastic bag with information and stuff they keep at home, and they say, I think this should be in the archive, it's important. And then we say, oh, we don't want to keep everything because then we also have to take care. But we want to listen to your story, and we want to see if more people around a certain theme are interested in it. Because heritage is something that is not about the individual, even though the engagement is about the individual, but it is about collective meaning making. And collective meaning making makes it heritage. So this is some examples of how we organize things. And we've seen pictures already the whole morning of gatherings, people getting together, trying to create safe spaces where people feel they can open up and share their stories. And around the themes they bring up, then we take that further and we create exhibitions with it. So I will show you a couple of the topics. Oh. This is called the Black Committee. The Black Committee was in the 90s a political movement of black politicians in Amsterdam Southeast, and they felt that they were part of political parties just to make sure that their communities would vote for them, but they were never on the higher level where they could actually also make decisions. So they actually started to come together and it started a revolt. because they wanted to have a voice on the higher levels. And the interesting thing was this is a very bottom-up movement, so there's not much actually kept from what they did, except from what was in the newspapers. But again, in the newspapers, it was very much one-sided, documented. So we invited them to come over and to share their stories with us. And first they were a little bit reluctant because they was like, so what do you want from me? Because you probably want to make it your own story. And then again, we will not be heard because you will make it in something that we don't want to say. And then I said, no, you get carte blanche. So you decide how your story is told. Through the whole exhibition process, I will go with you. So when I start writing the label text for the exhibition, when I make the selections for the pictures to put in, you are there as well and you decide with me. And this is something that I have actually since then been doing. So that's why I'm called the co-curator. So I'm never doing this on my own. I'm never making the decisions on my own. Another project was the Queering Southeast. This was about gay activism in Southeast. As said, since the 70s, we have been inviting many migrants, but I also told you today we have a high density of religious houses in Southeast. And sometimes, and I don't have to tell you about this, but sometimes the LGBTQ lifestyle and religion conflict. So we have a lot of Pentecostal churches in Amsterdam Southeast, and they advocate about gay healings and AIDS healings. So can you imagine if you are a young gay person and you don't know where to turn to be heard? You want to have a safe space. So what we've been finding out in Southeast, there was a lot of underground organizations that actually created safe spaces for these young people to be what they want to be and to talk about what they're interested in. Ghana is another project that we did, and I just wanted to quickly show it to you because this is actually a cooperation with the Trophy Museum, the World Museum in Amsterdam, with a long colonial history, a big colonial collection. And one of the communities we have in Amsterdam Southeast is a huge Ghanaian community. So we were interested in how they make Amsterdam Southeast their home. And we invited them to go and look at the collections in the Trophy Museum and see which objects would speak to them. And then we also asked them to bring an object from their house and say, so what at your home means Ghana to you? And then we made portraits where they talked about the object in the Trophy Museum, so they have that next to them. So for the first time in their lives, they were sitting with a museal object and they could touch it. And there was this really nervous curator with gloves standing next to it and saying, no, you can touch it, you cannot breathe on it, be careful. Which is interesting because a lot of the objects in there are objects that were for daily use. So before they came in the museum, everybody was touching and working with it. But all of a sudden in a museum, you're not allowed to. So we made portraits of that. But one of the girls actually picked out a canoe, and the canoe is 4 meters. So somehow, and it was in a depot far away, and somehow we could not bring that in for the videos because it was too much trouble. But then we thought, if this canoe is so important, then we have to do something with it. And it's a canoe that has never been in the museum. It has been in the collections for many, many years, but it has always been in the depot. So we started a project with the Trophy Museum and saying, we want it in Southeast. And I know we're a library, and we don't have any climatized cases or anything, so how can we deal with it? And actually the guy who's taking care of the collections in the museum said, Well, this is all about democratization. So these objects should go back to the people if they have meaning to them. So let's make it possible. And actually, when I go back at the end of the week, on Monday, the Canoe will arrive and we will give it a place in a library, and it will be there for 10 years. So the community in Southeast will have it there, and then we will start collecting stories around the Canoe to fill it with meaning. Then the last project I wanted to talk to you about is the Bijlmer disaster. Somebody asked this morning, so a lot of these projects are about pain, and how does that work? Isn't it hard to dive into this pain? And yes, it is. It is painful for a lot of the people, and I must say it was one of the most emotional projects for me as well. As said, 92 airplane crashed into 2 high-rise buildings, and last year it was 25 years ago. And we were interested in, like, a status quo. So how, 25 years ago, what do people still remember from it? Where is still the pain? Are there still questions? What do they keep at home as momentums for holding to that pain? Because that's also what people do. People have momentums to also sometimes tap into that pain. And something like this, collective trauma, is also something highly political, because it's also about sometimes when you have a collective trauma like this, it is not being seen on a national level. It's getting, it's fighting for recognition for your pain. So we started having these round talks with people in groups, but also a lot of one-on-ones. We went to the neighborhood houses, we went to the churches. And actually a lot of people, there was still a lot of anger. I mentioned the undocumented people that died. There's still a lot of question marks about how the disaster was dealt with. And a lot of the people in Southeast felt that they were neglected in aftercare. That even though, maybe for a lot of people, and I'm looking at some of the Dutch people, from outside Amsterdam, we did consider it to be national. But for the people in the Bijlmer, they felt it was kept very local. So a lot of them actually wanted to use us as a platform to see if we could actually bring this story to a national level and to get some acknowledgement. And I think we were able, we collected a lot of things, and we actually managed also to work together with a TV program which is called in Dutch Andere Tijden, Different Times, where they revisit historical moments, and they did all kinds of personal projects and portraits. And the people afterwards were actually very happy because they felt it actually got the attention that they wanted on a national level. And to top that off, we got, I don't know how it works in the different countries, but in the Netherlands, archival material becomes public after a certain period. And there were some notes from the government that became public last year. And we actually got the originals to show them in the exhibition. And the archives are always very, because climate and light and all these things. But they said it is too important not to show it in the Bijlmer. So therefore we grant you the loan. So that was, in a nutshell, what we do. I'm still here around for the next hours, so thank you.